Hi, it is Friday. Yeah, Friday, August 21st at about 9:30 in the morning. My name is Larry Cedar, and I'm back with you for another session on scanning. Scanning, SQANNING, which is the relaxation technique, which utilizes the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and ultimately mental calm. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to get, is calmed. Calm down, at peace, still, quiet. Can't be that way all the time, but you know, it's nice to be able to get there when you need to, especially when you've gotten yourself in a place where you're really wound up or obsessed or depressed or closed down or whatever. It's nice to be able to bring yourself into a place of calm and peace and openness. So that's what this technique's all about. It's based on the theory that through the incremental release of muscular tension, you can actually influence the state of consciousness, your state of mind. Free your emotions through using the muscles, the tool of the muscles. The reason we do that is, you know, there's two ways you can go when you want to help yourself. There's either the mind-body connection, and they are connected, or the body-mind connection. A lot of people try to think their way out of a problem. They try to come up with a theory or an idea or a book or a list of concepts that will bring them out of this state of confusion. And this theory, my theory, scanning, SQANNING, is the opposite. It says we'll use the body to bring us out of a confused or depressed or anxious or contracted mental state. The reason being is the mind is complicated. If we try to control our mind, it's very difficult. We can't control our muscles much more readily. You know, I can tell my hand to close and release. It's just we have a kind of direct control of our muscles. The other benefit is if we start by focusing on the muscles, the effort it takes to work on releasing or relaxing the musculature literally brings us out of our mind. So if we're having obsessive thoughts or dark thoughts or any kind of confusion, when you concentrate on the musculature, for that moment it takes you out of your mind, all of your mental processes. So that in itself quiets you. So that's what we're going to do. And people will say to me, well, why do you do it every day? Or as I do, several times a day. Are you that uptight? Are you that nervous? Are you that depressed? Do you need it that bad? I go, no, not at all. I practice scanning to practice, like playing the piano. If I want to be good at piano, I practice piano all the time. Not because I always feel like practicing piano, but because I know that if I practice the piano, I will get better and better at it. So at those times when I need it to perform really well, I will have put in the time. So that's why I do it every single day. Sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times a day. I really want to get good at it. I've seen the results. So that's why I do it every day. And I try to come here every day, but I don't always succeed in finding the time for that. But it's just to encourage the practice of scanning, the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. So that's all we're going to do today, is practice incrementally releasing muscular tension. And so you say, well, what does that mean exactly? Well, I'll show you. Squeeze your hands together. That's contraction. And release. That's expansion. We want to go from contraction to expansion. All we're doing is developing our skill and ability to, on demand, on command, release the muscular tension in our body. Now, this is it. We only got this, right? There's only so many areas you can go into. Now, it's very difficult to say relax your entire body like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on specific muscle groups and become familiar with how it feels to release muscular tension. Through practice, we'll get better and better at it until such time as, on demand, when we feel like we are in a contracted state, when we're confused, when we're upset, when we're depressed, when we're anxious, when we're obsessively thinking about things, we can say, aha, I have a solution. I am going to scan. I'm going to incrementally release the muscular tension in my body, and you can start anywhere. And through that process of muscular release, muscular expansion, this will influence the very processes of my mind, my very sense of consciousness, which will also then be released, releasing all obsessive thoughts and anxieties and fears. They will float away, and you will have brought yourself to a calmer, more centered state of being. That's what we want to do. We want to get better and better at that. Okay? Start like we always do. Squeeze your hands together. That's contraction. Okay? And that's just a way of setting up a sort of metaphor for our very state of being. Thaddeus Golus, who wrote The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, on which I base this practice, said that the universe is made up of 2 basic forces: contraction, squeeze your hands together, or expansion, release. So we squeeze our hands together to remind ourselves of that. And we say, okay, so this is me. This is me. That's you. Look at yourself. contracted. That's you contracted. That's what it feels like. It takes effort, a little uncomfortable. Maybe you hold your breath, sort of rigid, clamp down. And we say, I want to move myself from that state of being into a state of expansion. So you count 3, 2, 1, and you release. Drop your hands and take a deep breath. So we just moved 1 degree towards an expanded state of being. And here's a basic premise of this. You cannot contract and expand at the same time. You cannot squeeze your hands together and release the tension in your hands at the same time. So once you've begun to expand, you have stopped contracting. That's another benefit to this process. No matter how contracted a state you are in, if you can find a way to incrementally release the muscular tension in some part of your body, you will have infused yourself with the smallest amount of expansion. Once you begin to expand, you cannot contract. So it's an immediate benefit. The moment you expand, you feel an immediate benefit. Now, you may say, well, I did this. I took a series of deep breaths, like you said. I did all the things you say. I'm still uptight. Yes, but you are moving in the right direction. If you've been moving this way, once you stop, you're moving this way. Once you switch, you're moving this way. All you have to do is stay on that path. And again, that's why we practice, so that you get used to the discipline and practice of expansion. And until one day you'll find that you're much better at it than you were, let's say, a month ago. You'll go, I've been practicing this. I've been practicing moving myself into a state of expansion, and I find it easier to do now. So you will find on more occasions when you feel uptight, worried, anxious, depressed, you have a skill, you have a tool which can take you out of it more and more readily. You've gotten really good at helping yourself. So that's it. And if you see me taking moments of stillness and silence, you'll hear me say that a lot, moments of stillness and silence, it's because stillness and silence are the opposite of action and thought and words. So stillness and silence are another way to move yourself towards expansion. I always say if you have no time to practice this in your mind, because we can always find time, but if your mind, you just don't have time, if you can find a few minutes to take a series of deep breaths and sit in stillness and silence, followed by deep breaths, stillness and silence, followed by deep breaths and stillness and silence, you will achieve probably about at least 50% of what this process can do for you. So do that if nothing else. So we're going to start there. Again, scanning is the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. Squeeze your hands together. Tight, 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 tight. That's you. Whatever anxieties you have about yourself, whatever doubts you have about yourself, whatever worries or fears you have about yourself and the world, whatever sense of depression you have, we are now representing that right here. You are contracted. That's what happens when you are contracted, or I should say overly contracted, because contraction is the stuff of life, asserting yourself, making decisions, forming words, ideas, building things, using yourself, making an effort is a contraction. But when you are overly contracted, like you're doing now, squeeze hard, you become rigid, limited, unhappy. You feel bad. So that's you right now. And again, you don't have to necessarily feel that way today. We're just practicing. We're just practicing the technique. Okay? I feel pretty good today, but I still like to practice this technique of expansion, because when I need it, it'll be there. So I'm squeezing my hands, reminding myself what it feels like to be contracted. And this represents everything. Physical contraction, emotional contraction, which is depression, mental contraction, which is obsessive thought. That's it. You're representing that right here. So take a look at that and see what that feels like. Sit with that for a while. You're becoming a student of yourself. You're studying yourself. We all want to understand how we work, what makes us tick. So we're looking at ourselves, and this is one part of what we can do in life. We can contract. It starts to get uncomfortable. We don't feel good. We want to stop. We don't know how. Well, it's easy. 3, 2, 1, release. Drop your hands to your sides. Take a deep, deep, deep breath. One more. And another. 15 seconds of stillness and silence. So what did we just do? We expanded. We were in a state of contraction and we expanded. Now this is the first step, so you may feel nothing, but maybe you do. What usually happens to me is after that first simple step of release, deep breaths, and stillness and silence, is I suddenly feel a little more quiet. I become aware that whatever thoughts were bouncing around in my mind, whatever physical agitation I may have brought to this session, have dissipated the slightest amount just through those simple introductory steps. Deep breaths, stillness and silence. So watch for those things. And I say watch for them because sometimes, you'll get a benefit from this practice that you're not even really aware of. So it's important to watch for it. See, how has my sense of being, how has my sense of consciousness changed? Even if it's the smallest amount. Do I feel a little more quiet? Do I feel a little more still? Have my obsessive thoughts dissipated ever so slightly? Part of the reason that happens is because the sheer focus on the physical act of expansion, physical muscular release, breathing, stillness and silence, the concentration on those physical tasks takes you out of your head. I like to say that you can't concentrate fully on the relaxation of a muscle group and have obsessive thoughts at the same time. Even if it's just for a moment, you will stop thinking about whatever you were thinking about if you put your full concentration into this act of expansion. Again, you can't make a fist and release a fist at the same time. You can contract and expand at the same time. So just this simple beginning step, releasing, deep breaths, stillness and silence, starts you on your way. There will be a change. It may be slight, but there will be a change. It's good to know because if you're ever in a situation, let's say I'm an actor, let's say you're about to go into an audition, you've only got like 5 seconds. Take a few deep breaths, sit in stillness and silence. Come back into yourself, remember who you are, and see what it does for you. Let's do it again. Squeeze your hands together. That's you. That's contraction. Already my hands feel a little less tense. They feel better. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. That's contraction. Again, we're trying to move ourselves from a contracted state into an expanded state. Tight, tight, tight. 3, 2, 1. Release. Drop your hands to your sides. See what that feels like to have let go of all that tension. Take 3 deep breaths. 2 and 3. 15 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. And absolute stillness and silence. So we're taking concrete, deliberate physical steps to move ourselves into a state of expansion. The reason we do that is because when we're in a contracted state, we tend to be holding on to it. Contraction is a form of making a decision, taking action, forming words, ideas, being decisive, worry, thoughts. These are all contractions, and we tend to get locked into our contracted state. It feels safe. Even if it's hurting us, it somehow feels secure and safe because we've taken a position. That's our defense. So we take these very strong introductory expansive actions to extract ourselves from this contracted state. You'll find you'll be a little bit at war with yourself. And I've been doing this for many, many years, and I still frequently don't want to start. I don't want to leave my contracted state. So deep breaths are a way of literally just dragging yourself out of that cave and pulling yourself into this expanded state. Okay? Again, take moments of stillness and silence. They're very valuable. We get so caught up in these external processes, whatever our life is these days, and life is pretty stressful these days. We're thinking about a lot of things. We're figuring out what we need to do. We're trying to deal with this problem and that problem, or we're trying to, let's say, do something we think is necessary to identify ourselves or save ourselves. We're very caught up in these external processes. These are all contracted actions. We're making decisions. So when you go to a place of stillness and silence, you are, for that moment, detaching yourself from all those external processes. You're stepping away from those contractions into a state of expansion, just being. We forget that we can exist safely and happily doing absolutely nothing. In fact, that's our core being. We've made a lot of decisions and taken up in a lot of positions in our life, but at our core, at our center, is just us, just being. That's us. That's who I am. I'm not my career. I'm not my bank account. I'm not my, hobbies or activities. I'm not my worries or anxieties. That's not me. Those are things I've attached myself to. I'm just here. I just exist. It's a very peaceful, very satisfying place to be. That is what it is to be expanded. So what we're going to do now, you can do what I said, these introductory steps. They're very simple. Squeeze to remind yourself that you are contracted or whatever it feels like to be contracted. Release, see what it feels like to release that. Take a series of deep breaths and sit in stillness and silence. Those are the introductory steps. Those are to pull you out of, they're like an intervention, to pull you out of your contracted state. And then see how that feels for you. And then we're going to move on now to the specific, what I call the nuts and bolts of the technique, which is the incremental muscular release, which is what we're really going for, is to release the physical aspect of our being. Release the muscles. See what that does for you and how that affects your mind. If the mind is a muscle of sorts, holding on to obsessive thoughts and ideas and compulsions, as you relax the mind, it too begins to let go, and all these obsessive thoughts just float away. Nothing's holding them, and you begin to feel calm and free. Before we start that, I want to take a brief moment to talk about, again, this concept of contraction and expansion. And again, this is based on the ideas of Thaddeus Golis, The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. And this stuff gets kind of like existential, so you'll forgive me, but I think it makes sense. He talks about us being contracted and how when you are contracted, you are imploded. Now you think of, let's say this is one contracted being and this is another contracted being. So if they encounter each other, what happens? They slam up against each other. It's a very violent sort of relationship. When one contracted being encounters another contracted being, they cannot come together in any way, shape, or form. There's no space. As you begin to expand, and if you think of, again, the hands as a metaphor, you begin to expand. You become permeative. There's space. Then what? This being and this being can come together. There's a way to interact and merge and be with each other or interact with each other without conflict, with cooperation. So in a very broad, general, philosophical sense, when you are contracted, you are banging up against the world. There's no space in you to allow for things, to allow for such to exist and such to exist. You fight everything. You have no space in you to accept and absorb and deal with the things you're encountering. So you feel very battered. You feel conflicted. Life is very threatening. Everything you encounter strikes you hard. So you become even more contracted to protect yourself, which makes you even more impermeable. This is why sometimes when we feel like we're in a contracted state, we're at war with the world. Everything bothers us, everything. And any one particular thing at any one particular moment, small thing, may just drive us crazy because we can't allow for it. We're in a state of denial, contraction. So as you expand in the very general sense, as you become more open, more accepting, more permeable, more willing to see and absorb what's going on in the world and deal with it in an open, collaborative way, life becomes less threatening. You don't see things as a threat. You see things as what they are. And you just simply make a decision. I have to make a decision. How do I deal with this? And you kind of do a dance. You move around things. You merge with things. Life becomes more pleasant. Life isn't so threatening because you're open. You're accessible. So that's a very broad kind of philosophical way of looking at this contraction and expansion process. You'll find on certain days when you're feeling expanded and happy, certain things that used to bother you just don't. That's fine, because you're open to it. You'll find on those days when you are contracted that even the smallest annoyances drive you crazy, put you over the top. One of the reasons we go for, alcohol or dope or pills or whatever is we find we can't cope with life. We become very contracted. We take a pill that chemically expands us. So for that moment, we are more accepting. We feel calmer. We feel more able to process life. Okay, and so in a sense, that's good. Listen, if you need some sort of chemical assist, and that's the only way you can do it, because life can be difficult, But if you could achieve that without chemicals, without drugs, if you can find a way to do that for yourself, it's a wonderful, very self-empowering thing, because you have a tool within you that allows you to expand and more happily process life. You can move through life with much greater ease. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to learn how to move ourselves from a contracted into an expanded state. And look, I'm going to tell you right now, I get contracted a lot. I get what I call messed up a lot. My mind goes to places where everything just seems horrible and everything's dark and depressing. So that's why I do this, because I can I found that I can bring myself out of it. By using these steps, I can bring myself into a more expanded state where the same, let's say, 3 items I was looking at that were driving me insane. And that could be anything. It could be politics, that could be health, that could be work, relationships, whatever those things are that were just driving me nuts, making me hateful and angry or upset. when I become expanded, I look at completely differently. Yeah, that's not my favorite thing, let's say, but that's okay. I can accept that it exists and I can process it. So that's what we're doing. Moving ourselves into a more open, expanded state through the incremental release of muscular tension. That's it. So let's continue. Excuse me while I have a drink of apple juice. You know, I used to love alcohol. I used to love joints. Marijuana. I used to love that stuff when I was in college. I mean, who didn't? I was under so much stress in college, and it was great to be able to drink something or smoke something that made all my worries go away for a moment. But I found, ultimately, they made me feel bad. They made me feel dependent. They made me feel a little bit embarrassed and shamed because I had to do this thing to feel better. And, you know, I just didn't trust my judgment. So I've always tried to move away from that because I like to think that we can solve our own problems. We can bring ourselves into a state of happiness without a chemical assist. Healthier, better for us. Here we go. So we've done the introductory phase. We've moved from contraction to expansion. We've taken a series of deep breaths, moments of stillness and silence. We've moved ourselves ever so slightly into an expanded state. We've begun the expansion process. So now let's continue to go even deeper. How do we do that? Incremental release of muscular tension. We're going to work our way through our body, particular zones, and just concentrate on ever so slightly releasing the muscular tension in that zone. For example, squeeze your hands, 3, 2, 1, release. I just released the tension in my hands. Now we're going to start with the rest of the body. The face, on my count, and I'm going to snap my fingers because it's like a switch. When the switch is flipped, the power goes out. The power to the muscles disappears and those muscles just slouch and relax. It's like, turn off the switch. Okay? So that's what we're going to do to each muscle group. The face. 3, 2, 1, feel it, release. That's what we're going to do for the next 10 minutes. We're going to incrementally release muscular tension in different parts of our body, and you are going to pay very close attention to what it feels like to incrementally release muscular tension. You're going to study that feeling. You're going to practice it. You're going to learn how to induce it yourself on demand so that at any given moment in the day, you can bring yourself into an expanded state. It's a wonderful tool. The face. 3, 2, 1. Release. And the great thing is, it doesn't matter what muscle group you start with. I'm going to go through this cycle in the way I do it. But the great thing is, the minute you begin to focus on incremental muscular release, you have begun the expansion process. No matter what muscle group you pick, it will help your overall state of being. Focusing on incrementally releasing the musculature affects your entire state of being. It clears your mind. I don't understand it. Well, I kind of understand it, but kind of don't. But it works. The face. 3, 2, 1, release. You feel that? So that slight, I call it the Tahiti effect. Imagine you're on a beach in Tahiti and you have no obligations. You've turned off your phone, you're away from work, everything's just fine. You're lying on a beach and you're just... Someone just said to you, you've got 72 hours here in Tahiti and you don't have to do anything. We're going to bring your food to you. We're going to clean your hotel room. All you have to do is lie on the beach and do nothing. That's it. It's the Tahiti effect. 3, 2, 1. Just let go. We carry around a low level of muscular tension 24 hours a day. And I say 24 because we hold it even in our sleep. And I'm sure you've woken up on occasion, just been kind of like, where'd that come from? Well, our mind is working while we're sleeping. We're dreaming. We carry this low level of muscular tension unnecessarily. We're on guard when we don't need to be. We're thinking about stuff when we don't need to be. So we're working our way through our body and we're letting go of that unnecessary tension. It's draining us of energy. It's keeping us in a contracted state. It's creating anxiety, worries, compulsive thoughts. Don't need it. Let it go. The face. 3, 2, 1. Release. But you think to yourself, if I let go of my muscular tension, I'll be so unprotected. That's the feeling I get. If I let go of my muscular guard, and by association, my obsessive thoughts, I will be completely exposed. I'll be vulnerable. To what? Well, whatever you imagine is threatening to you in the world. And unfortunately, even when we're in situations where there's just no threat, there's absolutely no threat, we tend to carry around that low level of fear, that low level of tension. So we're practicing letting that go. You don't need it. The face. 3, 2, 1. Release. Move up to the top of the head. 3, 2, 1, release. So you say, how do I release the tension in the top of the head? I wasn't even aware I had tension there. Study your body. Learn how to put your focus into a particular area of your body, top of the head. See what it feels like. Register. Note where it's at. Take a level. Let's say from 1 to 10. Let's say it's at a 7. And move it to a 5. 3, 2, 1. Release. That's what we're doing. That's what you're going to get better and better at. Okay? It might not feel familiar now, but we know how to make a fist and release because we use our hands all the time. If you practice, you will learn how to release the tension in all these other parts of your body. Zone 3. The back of the head. 3, 2, 1. Release. So if you had a hood of tension over you, the face, the top of the head, the back of the head, now it's very slack. It's very loose fabric. 3, 2, 1, all three at the same time. 3, 2, 1, release. And you'll begin to become aware that there's tension in areas you didn't even used to think about. I just felt my ears let go. Now that's strange, but that's what you're doing. You're studying your body now. You're looking for tension. I call it scanning with a Q, just to be cute. But I call it scanning because we are scanning our body. We're looking through our body for pockets of tension that we didn't even know we had. You're building an awareness of your own muscularity and seeing what you can do about letting go of tension. The back of the head, 3, 2, 1, release. Moving quickly now, the neck, 3, 2, 1, release. And again, it's a turning off of the switch. Whatever tension you had there, let it go. As I said, 9 times out of 10, we're not even aware we're holding tension in a certain area of our body. Like, there's tension in my neck. You better believe it. 3, 2, 1, release. The other thing that's great about this process is there's a tendency when we feel tense to say, I need a drink, I need a joint, I need to pop a pill. Why? Because we just think there's no other way out of this mess. But if you learn to study your body, you become aware of not only where you're holding tension, but that you have control over it. You won't feel the compulsion to reach outside yourself for a solution. You'll realize, I can fix that myself. I can fix that problem. It's very empowering to know that you can fine-tune your own state of being. It's very useful. Zone 5 is the shoulders. 3, 2, 1. Let them drop. Release. And in the middle of this process, if you feel an impulse to take a deep breath, take it. As I said earlier, deep breaths are very expansive. As you begin to release tension, your body is grateful for the opportunity to replenish itself. Generally speaking, when we're tense, we don't breathe. We hold our breath. So the body's saying, thank you, I can get back to my normal, relaxed state. Deep breath. Another. And another. 15 seconds, stillness and silence. You can take 30 seconds if you like. You can take 2 minutes. You can take 5 minutes. You can sit like this for the rest of, the session. 15 minutes, a half an hour. When you find that place of stillness and silence, that place of neutrality, where your obsessive thoughts and worries and physical tension have drifted away, just stay there. Become familiar with that place. Study it. Embrace it. Make it a part of your life, so that as needed, you can induce that state. 1, 2, 10, 20 times a day, as much as you need. You're bringing balance back into your life. We tend to be over-contracted. We're active. We're making decisions. We're worrying. We're building things. We're taking meetings. We're forming relationships. We work hard. We tend to just think that's the only solution, when in fact, in a balanced life, you do both. You also expand. So that ultimately there's contraction, expansion, balance. But make expansion, make that stillness and quiet a part of your life. Pepper your day with it. Find 5, 6, 10 moments during the day when you can just sit in stillness and silence. Balance your life. I'm an actor. And I think it's always difficult for me to remember because I tend to talk. I'm a verbal actor. I like language. I do these shows where I just talk nonstop for an hour, hour and a half. I find language very satisfying and expressive, and I enjoy it. So what happens when you're that kind of person? What are words? Words are a contraction. It feels good to utilize my skills. But what I forget is the value of silence. So my wife, who directs me in shows, will sometimes say to me, you can take a breath here. You can take a moment. You can stop talking. You can just be. And I go like this. Now that silence speaks volumes. One of the most fascinating things if you're watching a performance is to watch someone be silent. The first thing you think is, what are they thinking? What's going on? What's going to happen next? You've made space. Anything's possible. When you've created silence, when you've created space, anything's possible. That's the beauty of it. It opens you up to possibilities. You'll notice, if you watch a lot of news or cable TV, it's a non-stop talk fest. And you wonder sometimes if someone was to come on the air and say, I'd like to make a point here about something, so let's just all sit in silence for 30 seconds. It would just seem horrific. What's going to happen now? 30 seconds of silence? It's insane. It's very powerful. So utilize that skill. Utilize your ability to just sit in stillness and silence. See what happens. See what it does for you. Zone 5, again, the shoulders, 3, 2, 1, let them drop. Deep breath. And we're going to move quickly through the rest because I like to keep these sessions to a half an hour. Zone 6 is the chest, down into the stomach and waist. 3, 2, 1, release. There you go. Zone 7, down the back and into the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, release. And by now, you're beginning to understand what I'm talking about. So when I say release, you're going, oh, that. As I like to say, it's a release, which is also a relief. Because you've been holding this tension, and when you let it go, it's like, oh, like this burden's been lifted off to you. I don't have to hold that tension. I can let that go. I've been working 24 hours a day to just hold that low level of tension I didn't need to be holding. It's like you're driving your car and you're dragging an anvil behind the car, maybe 10 anvils. And someone says, you can cut 1 or 2 of those loose. You go, I can? And you cut 1 or 2 of them loose, and suddenly your car is runs so much more smoothly, more quickly, uses less gas. So cut them all off. Take all those anvils off. You don't need them. Why was I dragging them? Oh, I thought I needed to. So we're taking off the anvils. Zone 8, the last zone, down the legs, across the knees, and into the feet. 3, 2, 1, release. So you'll start to get really good at directing your focus into these muscle groups. When I say the feet, you'll go, okay, you'll just go there. I say 3, 2, 1, release. You just let them go. You'll just feel a slight So if you're just starting this for the first time, this might seem all weird and unfamiliar. But just remember, all we're doing is like my telling you to make a fist and release. That's all we're doing. We're going through our body and we're making a foot fist and releasing it. You're just letting go of tension. And then what happens by association, you'll begin to notice your mind relaxes, your obsessive thoughts float away, and you feel still, calm, quiet, at peace. We're bringing ourselves to that place as frequently as we like. Once, twice, 10 times a day. We're injecting expansion into our life, into our overly contracted lives. We're bringing balance back by inducing our bodies, our minds, with a sense of expansion. That's all we're doing. So you practice and you practice and you practice. You get better and better and better at it until on demand, as needed, you can expand. It's called scanning, SQANNING, the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, primarily, followed by emotional and mental calm. Which allows us to then more readily merge and interact with the world. Less conflict, less anxiety, less compulsion, less resistance, less denial, acceptance, and ultimately, love. That's it, folks. That's today's session. I will repost this session on my Facebook page for 24 hours. I also will post it on the Scanning Facebook page if you want to see this and previous sessions, SQANNING. They're all there. There's also a YouTube channel I have where I put some of these there. If you want to go to that and subscribe or whatever, it's up to you. You have learned everything you need to learn to go out and do this forever and for the rest of your life without ever seeing my face again. That would make me very happy. But if you want to come back, I try to be here every day. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, but I try to be here at least once a day to go through the session, the process myself. This has helped me, and to encourage you to continue to do it yourself. You know, as I said, you face a lot of resistance. The body tends to protect us. So it's good sometimes to have someone to encourage you to move through it, but you can do that yourself. You can just push through it and keep practicing. And that's all. I like to end every session with rule number 1. Rule number 1 in life: love yourself. Love yourself. This is it. This is what you were given. You have to cherish it and love it for better or worse. It will only help you if you love yourself. It will only make life easier. Love itself is an expansive act. When you love, you allow yourself to merge with others. So there's as much love in the universe as you could possibly need. Take as much as you need. When you have so much that there's excess and it's spilling over, give that extra to the rest of us, because we could all use it. All right, have a good day, everyone. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.